We are back for episode 3 of our
250 journal
yes.
into the Letterboxd top 250 list.
And as we did the first Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse in the last episode, we are now doing the second, which is called Across the Spider-Verse. That makes sense. You know, we're in the Spider-Man mood. We might as well watch more Spider-Man.
It's true.
Films.
And I found out that for the third we have to wait quite some time.
And maybe the third will also end up in the top 250 on Letterboxd.
That's very true.
The second ranks higher than the first. I think it ranks in 50th place. So it's according to the people of Letterboxd, we have watched one of the top 50 films of all time.
That you already watched.
I did already.
And for me again was the first time.
Yes.
So also interesting. Maybe this contrast, I have to say.
And so the people of Letterboxd think that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which came out in 2023, is a better film than Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
We confirm his 52nd position.
Do you agree or do you disagree?
I disagree, to be honest. Because I understand it's much more complex, it's more interesting in this sense, but I think it's weaker even maybe because of its complexity. And I think some themes, such as like education of from the parents to the child and of the parents of parenting, I think those details maybe have been a bit left aside and not developed in a way that could actually help parents to educate their children, I think. Like, I don't know, I feel like some things are a bit weaker and some things are stronger. I don't know, like also, again, like the visuals, animation in general is so great. And also the soundtrack is actually very good. And I have to say also very interesting ideas, to be honest. What do you think?
I also think that it's divided. I mean, I think the first film, the story of the first film is probably one that appeals to me more in that it's more grounded in reality. And I've always liked in the Spider-Man films when they are very set in our world and what tangibly feels like our world. So all the school stuff, the kind of combination, the balancing of the life between the secret identity of Spider-Man and the kind of day-to-day life of Miles Morales and having to keep these two sides of his life in order and the difficulties that brings. And I really like that stuff. And that stuff kind of happens in this film, but only for the first half hour. Because this film tells the story of a group of different spider people, all of whom are meeting in a... I think it's... the details of the story, I'm not entirely like... I probably need to look into it more or to watch more Marvel films, but I think it's like one of the universes in which all of these spider people are able to meet and they have a big spider society, and a lot of the film is set in that world.
Yeah, in this multiverse, we can call it like that.
Because each of these spider people come from one universe, and that means that there's an introduction of a whole cast of new characters, my favourite of which is British punk Spider-Man, played by Daniel Kaluuya, he's one of my favourite actors, so I was excited to see him on screen.
We saw on Get Out, and we will see again on Get Out. That's cool.
Because Get Out is also in the top. I think he might. I don't know if Judas and the Black Messiah is also in the top 250.
I don't know, to be honest. Hard to keep up sometimes.
It is hard to keep up. But, so that I really enjoyed. I think in general, like, some things are incredibly well done. Again, like with the first film. Not to repeat too much, but it looks really amazing. I think it's maybe even better looking than the first film in some moments.
In fact, I read like around 1,000 animators were involved in this project. 1,000 is such a huge number. It's incredible. And also they've been working for many years because they started working already in 2018 when the first came out, and they had to delay because like in 2021 maybe, so 1 year before it was supposed to come out, the script wasn't finished yet, and then it came out in 2023. So I mean, it's a lot of work and long by so many people, so it means like really they took care of so many little details, and you could really see it.
And you never want to take that for granted.
Yeah, in fact,
because
you notice at some point they mentioned first, like in the background at some point, in like there is a scene where there are some kind of TVs or screens in the background, and there is a scene of Tobey Maguire
yeah.
as Spider-Man, and there was something else that you noticed.
Just I know at one point there's Daniel Kaluuya says, I can't remember, but he uses Cockney rhyming slang, and it comes up on the screen like for one split second. Like I can't remember what it is, but it's like this means this in British Cockney rhyming slang, and it's just there's so many. You should go through this film in like 0.5 speed and look at all the details, because there are so many details.
It's incredible.
It's actually an injustice to only watch this film once, because
It's true.
nearly every scene you can see that the animators have tried to add something extra to separate it from the norm. So I think that's something I really appreciate is, for example, there's a scene quite early on in the film, so it doesn't spoil anything, I think, but there's a scene where Spider-Man or Miles Morales has, I can't say Spider-Man because there's about 500 Spider-Man in this film.
It's true.
So
There are so many.
Miles Morales and
And they play
Gwen
with it.
have a kind of romantic moment. I mean, nearly romantic moment, sat on a building. But just the way in which it's kind of made, you think, no, this is actually really well made. It's really, they added more to the scene than could have been done. It's kind of what could be a very simple scene because of the combination of music and visuals and the fact that they're kind of sat upside down on this building and it looks really good.
It does.
It kind of elevates that scene to something more, and I think that's what these films do really well. They take quite simple scenes that you've seen before in superhero films, but add a few extra elements, imaginative in terms of so much in terms of script writing, because I think there's some moments in the film where you kind of see not holes in the script, but some of the writing is very generic.
It's true. And also, I wouldn't say maybe holes, but maybe little holes from time to time. Adding to what you just said, I think this film must be seen in a cinema.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I think we didn't see it in a cinema.
Unfortunately,
just to confirm.
not. Did you see the first time in
Yes.
the cinema? Do you feel like a difference between the two experiences?
I think in the cinema it can almost be overwhelming, because you don't have. It is quite an overwhelming film. It's like so constantly sensorial. With like the first half of the film is constantly scored by hip hop, and then the second half has actually got more film soundtrack. And I think my preference instinctively would be the more hip hop score, because I think it makes the film stand out more. And for me, it helps me remember some scenes. Like there's one scene where Miles goes from a rooftop and he kind of follows Gwen, and it's like an entirely uninteresting scene, but they have this song that I think is by Sway Lee, and it's playing over the scene. And like for me, I really like the song, so it kind of makes the scene more memorable. And also the scene where they party, they have kind of a party for Miles's dad again in the first like half an hour of the film, and the soundtrack that plays in that scene is really nice as well. And I think having these original songs made specifically for the film elevates scenes that would otherwise be unremarkable into, at least for me, being memorable, because I really think the soundtrack for me is something that's very important in the film.
And again, big artists.
Yeah, exactly.
Really, so many.
Maybe even more than in the first film.
Yeah, maybe. Also because I guess like once you've seen the huge success of the first one, somehow you want even to be part of this project. And being it's also so well made, and so I'd say also really like one of the main characters is the music. As a musician, you want to be part of it somehow.
Yeah.
If you like this style also.
I agree.
One of the like downsides for me, as I was saying before, is like, for example, this romanticization, or I don't know, like acceptation and even idealization. Maybe idealization is the right word, of this type of very traditional family, and the mom telling them, "No, you're a good dad," after he has some doubts because he's punishing his child. Oh, you're grounded for 1 month. Oh, not 2, not 3. As if this was an interesting or good educational model. And I think that's a big problem, because it's really, I think, in my opinion, it's really, really, really not. Because what does he obtain? Just a war between him and the child. And the child is not even, I don't know, I mean, you're not really First, he's not able to freely speak to you. Second, okay, then if you don't do something that it's supposed, I don't know, if you behave in a certain way, it's just because you are afraid of the consequences. What's the point? That's not what I think. Such a film that has an impact on different generations, I think, because both the parents who, as we said also in the other episode, loved these type of films and they are engaged in the story, they can relate somehow, and also because we could relate maybe even in the last film a bit more than in this film, like it's more representative somehow. So you have these people that can emulate the behaviors represented, or the models represented in this film, and the children and the teenagers and everything. So I don't know. I think this is a bit of a weak point because I mean, with all the money they got, with all the effort they put in it, I expect something that is a bit outside the extremely traditional family. He's the like a big voice who can say, "Oh no, you're grounded," and the mom is a bit more okay, empathetic and everything, but also she can say, "Oh, but you're also grounded." I don't know. I expected something a bit more. Even if, okay, there is also, spoiler slightly, even if we could imagine it from the first film, Peter Parker of the other universe, who he's shown as a father who stays a lot with his child and invests in education. But again, he's the one who who is disobeying the rules that the mother gave that are supposedly for the good of the child. And again, if you don't agree, you can talk about it. But no, he's like the fun with the dad and the rules with the mom. Very basic, and that for me is a bit of a weak point, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, as we said, I think the writing isn't always a strong point of the film. I don't think it's a film that necessarily has the intentions of making any extremely profound points about these matters. But as you say, I think it's important, especially in films that are extremely accessible and extremely widely seen, it's important to have good representations, or at least thought out representations of familial dynamics, because it is a film that cares about family, and
Absolutely.
which has family as one of its biggest themes.
And they care about some details, both in terms of like the quality and the technical aspects, and in terms of dealing with some different representations of different models, of breaking down some uh, status quo, let's say. I don't think it's badly made, to be honest. Overall, it's just it's a bit stereotypical, but I think it works quite okay.
As in the first film, I think like these are films for if not for a uniquely young audience, they're also meant to appeal to a young audience. And I think, like in the first film, there's a real effort, and I think they even go further in some ways in the first film. There's a real effort to represent and to tell different stories.
Here they go further than in the first.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, in a certain way.
And to spend time with different characters.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely there. That's more. Also, like for example, I liked the stereotype of the white woman who was like the director of the school, say like, oh no, but it's very caricatural, but okay. And in the end, it has to be more simplistic, let's say. And she was like saying, oh yeah, because you are special because you
come from a struggling background.
Exactly, you for sure come from a struggling background, and because you are half Dominican, half Puerto Rican. Maybe she said Dominican, and they were saying like, no, I'm Puerto Rican actually. And so you have to feel like that. And the parents were like, but actually, we're not really struggling, blah blah. And she was like, no, but for sure you are. So okay, that's a good message because it's very explicit and somehow needed.
Yeah, and again, I think in animated, I think both in the genre of animation and in the genre of superhero films, those messages aren't often heard. Maybe more increasingly now, although I don't know now because I think there's been another culture shift to the right in the last year in Hollywood. But I think in the last 5 years or so, I think there has been an increased desire to include these themes in a more thought out way in children's films, but I still think it's nice to see, I don't know, some different cast of characters. I think,
that I agree a lot.
Yeah, to go back to those, all the different spider people we see in this film, some of them are so far away from what you could imagine in a Marvel superhero film, and sometimes you kind of have to, or at least I was having to remind myself, okay, this is actually something quite original.
Such as, do you have an example?
Well, I think like when Daniel Kaluuya talks about antagonizing fascists, and he doesn't like the AM or the PM, and there's kind of a shot of him graffitiing over a statue of Churchill. I think that's something. I mean, it's only a small detail, right? And I don't want to be too easily pleased, but I think that is quite a cool thing to have in such I don't know, like think about Captain America and think about all these Marvel films, which really feel like they're kind of like adverts for the US military, or these other action films that have come out in the last years, like Top Gun Maverick and all this stuff, which is literally funded by the US military. And then, I mean, I know it's not much, but to have a character who comes out and...
Yeah, it's true.
And I think there is a desire from this film to question some hegemonic features
by far
that usually are not questioned.
I agree very much.
Superhero films.
That's why maybe I expected something more in some.
And even the dad of Gwen and his relationship. Again, let's not talk about the details of the plot, but he has a relationship to his work as a police officer, and also he's kind of trying to balance that with his relationship with his daughter, who is, of course, Spider-Woman. And that story, I think, also, again, it's like, it's very simple. The writing is often quite heavily cliched, but there's a desire to go further. There usually is in this type of film. And, as I think it was...
with the time, respecting the time of the characters also, I think.
Yeah.
Because he takes his time to get there somehow.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's also, I think, it's good because it's it's a well-written character in this sense, I guess.
Yeah, and I think when you rate and review films, so I think we both gave this film 4 stars.
Yeah. So the same for me of the previous.
I think when it comes to film criticism, I think it was Roger Ebert who talked about it, and how when he was rating or reviewing a Spider-Man film, he wasn't reviewing it compared to an art film that had come out the same year. He was reviewing it compared to the previous Spider-Man film. And I think you have to take context into account, because if this film had pretenses of being, a film that was earnestly trying to break down family dynamics in a realistic and original way, you probably wouldn't give it 4 stars, because I think a lot of the writing is laden with cliches and not particularly insightful and not particularly original. But I don't think that is the objective of the film. I don't think it pretends to do that. I think it has other very, very strong points, like the animation and the musical style, and I think it just tries to include hints here and there, as all the best kids films do. It's there for kids, but there for adults too, and I think that's mostly the case with Spider-Man Across Spider-Verse and its predecessor. And I think by that logic of the way in which we criticize films, when I give this film 4 stars, I'm not necessarily comparing it to all of the other films on the top 250 list on Letterboxd.
Or the other things that you gave 4 stars to.
No, I'm comparing it to the other superhero films I've seen, which a lot of them really suck, and I don't think this one really sucks. I think this one is mostly pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. No, yeah, I agree so much. So much. Even if, as we said, like, yes, some things are a bit... Even, like, for example, for me, the story of the best friend of Gwen is not... I don't know, it's a bit rushed, maybe. Or, I don't know, I don't see it working 100%.
There's a lot going on in the film in general.
That's a lot. Sometimes it's hard to keep up. In fact, I'm also afraid that we're like missing some big parts.
And there's some points where you kind of, I think specifically if you're not aware of all the lore, and even more than in the first film, if you're not aware of the lore and the background of the film and all the kind of cameos and history of the characters, you can just get lost at some points and just think like there's some parts that won't be for you. But that's fine. I think also like it's absolutely fine if films cater to the audience which is most interested to them, and not every film has to be entirely for a general audience. And I really think like it's actually really interesting to see like, oh, there's Childish Gambino. Why is he in this film? Because he appeared in one of the Tom Holland Spider-Man films a few years ago.
And these insights that I don't
you wouldn't exactly if you haven't seen these films, you just have no idea, and it just ends up being a bit confusing and overwhelming.
Even if I don't, I didn't know this information. I didn't have this information before, but I could still feel that there was a connection with the universe, let's say, of the Marvel and of the superheroes, because again, you understand that they really cared about so many little details, and they want to put everything together. Also because it's like, okay, it's the multiverse. There are 300,000 Spider-Mans. Okay, I think this also. It's interesting that even if you didn't experience it before, you can understand.
Yeah.
You can perceive it. You can feel it. So that's beautiful. But of course, like when it's another story. And so I'm glad I watched it with Glenn.
But I mean, I think I've missed so many things in this
Sure.
film that I just have no idea. And
Yeah.
not just in terms of these characters, but also in terms of some small details that it's really hard to catch them all, because I think there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of tiny details that have been added in by the animators in various points and Easter egg type things that you kind of blink and you miss it. And so I think we probably missed quite a lot of those things.
But we are up to learn more.
Yeah.
So if you know something, please
Yeah,
write in the comment, or I don't know, just let us know somehow, because that I'm really interested. I was reading a bit, but not too much, since it has to be like a fresh impression just after having watched the film. But for sure, like some things will be explored more, even like getting ready for the next one that is going to be in 2027.
And again, so many different art styles, because it goes from being like this crayon drawn art in some sequences. You've got a whole scene which is made with Lego, then it goes into live action suddenly, and
Yeah,
I mean, it's really like
and
this.
it works, to be
No,
honest.
it works. Yeah, it's a
It's
mix
not
of
like
different
a big.
styles.
It's not a contrasted, especially I think when we are in the, let's say, the headquarter of the multiverse, and that there are some like live action people, and there especially I think like they have kind of a filter because they're like in capsules, or and I think that works even more. It's a beautiful combo with the animation. It works slightly less, I think, when Spotman goes into the our world, let's say. Slightly less, but still it works perfectly. And again, also all the comic bubbles and bubble is the right word, but all the comics that pop up during the film, those also you should like stop 1 second and focus and read them all. And because some are also, first they use nice humor, I think, or they play a lot with themselves. That's one thing that I very much like, and again reminds me of Shrek. And they also give you hints to understand more this film that we're watching and this universe, because again it's so complex that you need to build knowledge about it to keep up, and to, even if it's also easy to follow, I have to say, but if you want to really enter, then you have to take care of the details.
And I think it's quite a funny film, again, like the first film.
Yeah.
There's plenty of jokes that don't necessarily land, but there's also like a decent amount of jokes that really do land.
Yes.
And I think there's enough jokes that land to make up, at least for me or for us, I think. Maybe some people didn't find it funny at all. Maybe some people thought every joke was great.
Yeah.
But I think enough jokes made me chuckle or made me smile to make up for the jokes that don't. I mean, it's funny enough, at least. And I think it's funnier than a lot of comedy films, or so-called comedy films that come out these days. Like, a lot of the jokes in this are genuinely quite funny.
Yes, true. And again, they played with like, because in the first film, I don't know if we mentioned in the previous episode, but at the end, after the credits, there is another scene. See, we mentioned it, like based in the past, one of the first Spider-Man, if not the first time. And again, in this one, they play with that scene that in the end became a meme, but in the contemporary animation style. So that's another inside joke that you've seen already, but at the same time is not tiring because it's playing with itself. So that's good, I think, that works.
Yeah. And I think it's really a film that benefits from being seen more than once. I think you could watch this the first time and miss so many details.
Yeah.
Maybe even seeing it 2 or 3 times is the only way to catch like a majority of things, because a lot of things will go over your head. It's impossible to catch everything in this film, seeing it just once, I think.
No,
Even
no.
for people who are really into this world, there's so many details, and it's so overwhelming sometimes, and so full of these crazy ideas. Like, there's one sequence with really surrealist, like, concept of like this Da Vinci art brought to life. I mean, it just sounds crazy saying it, but there's one of the villains in the film at the very beginning of the film, which is kind of this Da Vinci drawing, which is an art style that doesn't seem at all in its place in the world of the film, but somehow it kind of works.
Yes, true. Even if there that's the first maybe moment
Oh yeah, bad Italian.
that made me question like how they were actually adapting, or like how they were inserting different cultures in this case, or different even starting from the language, because the Italian wasn't really good. At some point he said something like meraviglioso, and it's supposed to be meraviglioso. I mean, if I don't know, that's again is like, okay, you have a huge budget, there are 300,000, I don't know, so many Italians in the US. Please take one person who speaks Italian, because okay, if the character is Italian, I mean, tailor it in the right way.
What's fun about this series is that the next film we will review will probably be something completely different, of a completely different tone, from a completely different country.
Maybe it's Beyond the Spider-Verse, the next one. It's called the title. Ah,
No, no,
no,
no,
sorry, you
no. The
meant like
first film
our
we do
review.
in the series,
Sorry.
yeah, which will also be a film for the top 250. We don't know which one yet, but it might be fun to do something completely different, like the furthest thing away we can find from the films we've done so far. So
Let's see what we will have.
yes, I agree.
Yes, it's true. And another thing that I wanted to say about this film is I didn't expect it to be divided into two. So at the beginning, it was supposed to be Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 and Part 2, and then it become two different titles. But I didn't expect it so open. I appreciated of the first that it was potentially, so it was like a closed ending. I mean, it was like complete in itself. You could take it for itself, and that worked perfectly. And here you need the second part, and then that I mean, I like it because I understand it's a bigger project, so that's cool. I like this idea. At the same time, I want to watch it. And I don't know. Yes, maybe I liked that the first one was auto-conclusive, self-conclusive,
Yeah,
if that makes sense in any case.
yeah, wrapped. I mean, it wraps itself up.
Wrapped. Yeah, exactly. So
Self-contained.
maybe I felt it a bit missing in this one, but again, I can understand in the complex picture, in the bigger picture. And also, there wasn't the after credit scene, which I was expecting, but still very cool. Also, the credits again, they're very well made. It's really like it's a whole product that is completely taken care of.
But yeah, the next video will be with a video, which is a shame because it means that you won't get to look at the beautiful thumbnails that Alessia has created.
I guess
For
it's
the
going to be.
whole
Let's
of
see when the
the
camera will arrive. To be honest, let's see.
for the
But
whole of the video.
supposedly that's our idea, yes, to go a bit in that direction, because okay, it's cooler to be honest with our
Yes, but we can still keep the
faces.
thumbnail as a thumbnail of the video. Just
A fun fact that I found was this one, that basically there is the Lego Spider-Man in the film, and it's taken from a YouTuber who made a trailer of the film by himself, no, with the Legos, and the producers saw it and they said, "Fuck, it's cool actually. Let's take it. Let's." And so they made him make some sequences, and that's I think is very very beautiful, and it underlines the power of the engagement of this type of product, and then that I think is also very interesting. It's multivocal somehow, and that's beautiful. Also because really, with so many animators, how can you not be multivocal?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's that type of cool little detail that shows the desire to interact with the fan base, and as we said, it's a lot of it is irreverential and making fun of itself and poking fun at even a lot of the superhero cliches, and that's what we want in the end from this type of film. So yeah, but as we said at the beginning, maybe it shouldn't be rated higher than the first. But in the end, I think it's also a more ambitious project in some ways.
That's true.
So I do understand why it is. And again, it's such a spectacular film that you do understand it being super high rated because it has this mass appeal. And there's some people on Letterboxd who've written their reviews how can you not like this film? And I kind of get it. It's even if it's really not your thing, I think of people I know who absolutely would hate this type of film. I think even then you have to reluctantly say, "Oh, it's super well made."
It is. It is. It's true. It's true. I mean, you can't deny that.
Yeah, no, it's clear. It's pretty obvious.
And that's it's what that's a bit amazing. Are you really amazing Spider-Man?
Yeah.
You really.
It's a different film, but
same brand. You really can't believe how great it is in terms of visual and soundtrack mostly. Then, as we said, the plot, it's actually well made. some script things are not the best, but still.
But yeah, so we will see you next time. We
Yeah, I
don't know which
guess
film
we
it is
finish
yet,
with this
and
one.
see you in the.
Maybe see you or hear you.
I
Let's
think
see.
you will see us.
Probably.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right.
Thank you for listening, and do the things that you know you
Yes, so
have to do
we're
if
on
you want to.
Spotify, we're on YouTube.
Yeah, we're on Spotify too.
If you're listening on Spotify, you can also watch us on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen to us on Spotify. You can
Depends.
follow us or subscribe to us on both of those things. We're going to start on Instagram soon. Maybe it's already happened by the time you listen to this. So yeah, all of those things means that we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Ciao.